So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. This just gives you an overview of what misogyny looks like globally and in Zimbabwe. So we'll go ahead and start with the global approach here, where close to 90% of men and women hold some sort of bias against women. So that is quite a scary statistic. I'm sure we can all agree that there are all these preconceived notions by such a great part of the population about what it is to be a woman and what it means to exist in this world as a woman. About 50% of the world's men and women feel that men make better political leaders. So this is what I was talking about before concerning how you might feel like women shouldn't undertake such heavy duties because they couldn't possibly make those decisions because there's the stereotype that we're emotional, that we can't think straight when our emotions are heightened, and therefore we shouldn't be in positions where we have to make important decisions. So this can affect our learning outcomes, our career outcomes, and our aspirations in general. So this is something to think about in terms of how it can affect the world at large. And over 40% feel that men make better business executives and that men have more right to a job when jobs are scarce. So this is very scary. And then we go on to the statistics concerning intimate partner violence and just gender-based violence in general, because there is a rise in femicide happening, especially after COVID, when everyone was trapped at home. There was a rise in domestic violence cases and gender-based violence in general. So that is something that's being affected in the world at large. So that's something we need to think about. And then you can see all the different statistics, how it affects from young girls all the way up to older women. No one is really exempt from the outcomes of misogyny, and we can see how it can affect the men as well, in that they then bear the burden of having to make all the decisions and not necessarily having a partnership. They then bear the burden of having to be the financial provider. It's looked upon them where it could easily be a partnership. It then becomes one person carries one load, the other person carries another, and there's no meeting in the middle. So we can see how this can affect both parties and that it really is negative to put all that weight on one individual. And then we see 24% of parliamentary seats worldwide are held by women. It just lets you know that although we are making progress because it's better than it was before, it is slow and it is a journey that we are all undertaking as each of us are understanding the different effects that misogyny can have on the world at large. And then we see in Zimbabwe how it affects women. According to the Women's Academy for Leadership and Political Excellence, there's a decline in the number of female candidates from 14% in 2018 to only 11% this year. So we see how misogynistic mindsets can affect our ability to prosper, both men and women, because it affects the learning outcomes, it affects the career prospects, it affects how we view ourselves, each individually. And then we see 40% of women aged 15 to 49 have experienced physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner, which is a very scary statistic, because then that lets you know that 1 in 3 women in this country have experienced that physical violence. So when you look around and you see a group of women, you could think every third woman, one of them is probably currently going through that or has experienced it at some point in their life. And that is a very scary statistic to think about. So we see how misogyny can affect us as the world at large, and we can see how it directly affects us in our country now, in Zimbabwe, for those of us who are connected from Zimbabwe, of course. And we can see how it affects the globe in general. And it is negative, and it is very, very heartbreaking when you see the types of cases that it can cause in terms of violence, in terms of affecting someone's ability to feel safe in their own skin.